Queensland, Australia. A peaceful Sunday afternoon in late spring. The air is warm. Kids are playing outside. Families fire up backyard grills. It feels like the kind of day where absolutely nothing could go wrong. Then the sky changes its mind. A massive shadow sweeps across the horizon, swallowing sunlight in seconds. The wind flips direction fast and carries a cold bite no one expected. Lightning slashes through the clouds like a warning shot from above. Phones across the region buzz with the same alert, severe thunderstorm. Take cover now. Before panic even has time to rise, it starts. Not raindrops, not small ice pellets. A 3-inch hailstone slams into a roof and explodes on impact, then another, then thousands. Car alarms erupt. Glass shatters. Streets disappear under a blizzard of ice. The once friendly sky has turned into a battlefield. In less than a minute, Queensland goes from sunshine to a war it never expected to fight. Just hours earlier, Queensland looked like the perfect postcard of spring. Brisbane's skyline shimmered in the afternoon sun, temperatures sat comfortably in the 70s, degef, and the weekend rhythm moved lazily through the streets. Families carried grocery bags to their cars. Dogs dragged their owners down quiet sidewalks. Teenagers lounged in parks, scrolling their phones and soaking in the final hours of the weekend. There wasn't the slightest hint that anything was about to go wrong. But deep in the atmosphere above, the ingredients for disaster were already falling into place. A pool of hot, moisture-loaded air hovered near the ground, trapped like steam beneath a lid. High above it, a fast-moving surge of cold, dense air was racing in from the Southern Ocean. When the two collided, the sky reacted like a shaken soda bottle with a cap waiting to blow. Clouds didn't just form, they launched upward, growing taller and more violent by the minute. Satellite images revealed enormous thunderheads punching through the upper atmosphere, signaling powerful updrafts capable of manufacturing giant hail. Inside the Bureau of Meteorology's control room, radar returns sharpened quickly from harmless greens to alarming reds and purple signs of intense storm rotation. The atmosphere had become volatile, aggressive, and unstable. Meteorologists recognized the pattern immediately. This storm wasn't building. It was evolving into something unprecedented. Down at ground level, though, life remained blissfully unaware. The stillness of the air felt almost peaceful. Birds' quiet leaves motionless, not a warning, but a trick. Nature often hides its sharpest teeth behind calm skies. Queensland had only moments left of normalcy. The atmosphere had loaded the weapon. The trigger was already half pulled, and when it finally snapped, the city below would never forget what came next. The shift from calm to catastrophe was instantaneous. 1 second, the storm clouds loomed quietly overhead. The next, they detonated. Hailstones began crashing down with no warning and no mercy. These weren't tiny ice pellets that bounce harmlessly off windshields. They were massive spheres of ice up to 3 inches wide, each weighing enough to smash through tempered glass as if it were fragile plastic. The impacts echoed across city streets like an endless barrage of explosions. Car alarms erupted in every direction, triggered by the violence from above. Metal roofs dented and buckled under the constant pounding, while glass panes shattered outward in bursts of glittering debris. Lightning strobed through the clouds, revealing glimpses of a world under siege yards, buried in ice fences torn apart, and gardens crushed into frozen rubble. Wind gusts accelerated beyond 60 miles per hour, turning hail into airborne shrapnel and launching roof shingles like spinning blades. Rain mixed into the chaos, coating the ice and roads with a slick glaze that made every surface treacherous. Even the strongest structures groaned as the storm tested every nail bolt and support beam, probing for weakness. Within just a few minutes, familiar suburban streets were erased beneath bright white drifts that looked almost like winter snow, until the storm hit again with even harder force. The sky was producing hail faster than the ground could swallow it. Drainage channels clogged immediately, trapping meltwater beneath rising layers of jagged ice. Cars and front porches vanished beneath piles that grew deeper with every new strike. The storm cell expanded outward with startling speed, covering mile after mile of densely populated communities. The scale of the destruction widened, and so did the terror. Families who had stepped outside to watch the storm were forced to dive for safety as the air itself turned hostile. Queensland had entered a full-blown weather disaster, and the hail was only the first weapon nature planned to use.
There you go. Good.
As the storm reached full strength, Queensland's modern defenses began to fail. The massive hail had already smashed rooftops and cars, but now it set off a chain reaction beneath the surface. Electrical systems were the first to fall. Transformers burst in bright flashes that momentarily lit the storm-ravaged streets before everything went black again. Power poles cracked under the weight of ice, dropping live wires across roads and driveways like lethal tripwires. In less than an hour, more than 70,000 homes across Brisbane, Ipswich, and nearby towns were without electricity. Darkness spread block by block until entire districts vanished from the map. The only remaining light came from lightning tearing through the sky and the occasional emergency vehicle struggling to reach those who needed rescue. With streetlights out and traffic signals, dead intersections turned into chaos. Drivers who had tried to outrun the storm were now stranded in flooded roads, their vehicles pinned by rising water or blocked by fallen trees. First responders pushed forward through debris fields, but every call for help came with dangerous uncertainty. A collapsing roof, a blocked roadway, a live power line hidden beneath water. No route was safe. Inside homes, temperatures dropped as cold air surged through shattered windows and holes ripped into rooftops. Families clustered together in the few dry corners left, using flashlights to navigate rooms littered with broken glass. The storm's roar became a constant reminder that the walls around them could give way at any moment. Without power, without communication, fear took over, fear not just of the storm but of what they couldn't see or understand beyond their doors. Hospitals and essential facilities relied on backup generators, but even those flickered under the strain. Elevators froze between floors. Security alarms failed. Communication towers blinked off one by one, making it nearly impossible for residents to call for assistance or confirm whether the worst had passed. Queensland wasn't only battling a violent storm, it was confronting what happens when the world goes dark. No electricity, no information, no certainty, just the storm, and the realization that nature had stripped away every safety net. As the hailstorm finally began to weaken, relief lasted only seconds. The clouds above unleashed a new assault, a wall of torrential rain crashing down with the force of a broken dam. What had been mountains of ice moments earlier now started melting rapidly, creating freezing streams that rushed into the streets with nowhere to go. Storm drains were already jammed with heavy hail and shattered debris, turning roadways into rising pools of cold, murky water. Entire lanes disappeared in minutes. Parking lots transformed into churning basins of runoff. Vehicles floated sideways as floodwater surged against their doors. Drivers, forced to abandon their cars, waded through freezing currents, carrying children and pets above their shoulders while debris swirled around their legs. What was once a familiar neighborhood route home had become a maze of unpredictable hazards, hidden potholes, broken glass-downed wires, and submerged obstacles waiting beneath the surface. Inside, homes already battered by hail water poured through broken skylights and roof punctures soaking floors and filling basements. Furniture toppled and electronics sparked before dying where they stood. Carpets swelled under inches of standing water, turning living rooms into shallow indoor lakes. Walls groaned as the weight of water and ice tested their limits. Emergency responders, already stretched thin by the blackout, now faced a fresh crisis that multiplied every danger. Streets they needed to reach were being swallowed by the flood. Every rescue took longer, and every delay put more lives at risk. Backyards dissolved into mud pits that trapped vehicles and blocked access. Pavement cracked under the pressure and collapsed into gullies as the force of the water eroded the ground from below. People inside their homes listened as the roar changed from ice to water, relentless, chaotic, and everywhere at once. Some climbed onto countertops and second floors while watching belongings float past their feet. The storm was no longer only falling from above. It was rising from below. This was the terrifying moment Queensland realized that survival meant fighting two disasters at the same time: a shattered sky and a drowning ground. One storm, two fronts, and no sign of mercy. Amid the chaos, a different kind of wave surged through Queensland. It wasn't water or hail. It was people, ordinary residents, rising up to protect one another when the systems they depended on failed. With darkness swallowing neighborhoods and floodwaters isolating homes, survival became a group effort. Garage doors opened not for cars but for community. Generators hummed inside as neighbors lined up to charge their phones, warm their hands, and check in on loved ones. Families shared blankets, flashlights, and meals by lantern light. People who had never spoken before now stood shoulder to shoulder, working together to secure roofs, move furniture out of the rising water, and sweep broken glass into corners where no one would step on it. Local businesses, grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations offered supplies for free, knowing that money meant nothing if someone couldn't stay warm or stay safe. Volunteers formed improvised rescue crews, walking through waist-high water to check on elderly residents stranded inside their homes. Pets, panicked by the noise and the dark, were scooped up and comforted by anyone with a free arm. Emergency responders refused to slow down despite exhaustion and danger. Firefighters dragged heavy equipment over slippery debris fields. Paramedics navigated flooded streets with stretchers raised above their heads. Police guided families to temporary shelters, flashlight beams bouncing off shattered windshields and flooded storefronts. Even social media, inconsistent and fragile with the power down, became a lifeline in places where a brief signal flickered on. Residents used those few precious seconds to send distress calls, share safe routes, or broadcast which shelters still had room. Queensland's infrastructure may have fallen, but the spirit of its people only grew stronger. Inside candlelit homes, families held on to each other not just to stay warm, but to stay hopeful. The storm had taken away comfort and certainty, yet it could not take away compassion. It could not take away the instinct to help. In a night ruled by darkness and disaster, the brightest lights came from those who refused to let their community face this storm alone. When the storm finally retreated and the clouds pulled back into the night sky, Queensland was left staring at a version of itself it barely recognized. Streets, once filled with weekend plans, now sat buried beneath ice mud and scattered debris. Homes that had held generations of memories now showed the scars of a battle fought against the elements. A single week had rewritten what normal meant for thousands of people. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't just weather. This was a sign. A warming planet is putting more power into the atmosphere. More heat, more moisture, more storms capable of dropping 3-inch hailstones and unleashing rainfall fast enough to turn neighborhoods into rivers. Scientists are seeing a new pattern emerge. What used to be a once-in-a-lifetime storm is now showing up every year. Queensland will rebuild because resilience is what communities do. But the question the rest of the world must answer is bigger. How many times can we rebuild before we finally prepare for what's coming next? Extreme weather isn't waiting for the future. It's happening right now. And eventually, every city from the U.S. Gulf Coast to the Midwest to the Pacific Northwest will face its own moment when the sky becomes the enemy. If this story opened your eyes, if it made you rethink how fragile everyday life can be, tap like so more people see what these storms are capable of. Share this video to spread awareness before the next disaster hits. Subscribe to stay informed as we cover real-life events shaping our changing world. Now, it's your turn. Do you think storms like this are unstoppable acts of nature, or are we pushing the atmosphere too far? Is your community prepared for the next extreme weather event, or are we still hoping it won't happen to us? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice shapes this conversation. Your awareness helps protect others. Together we can learn from this warning before the next storm writes its own.